In looking at a situation where some hospitals may already be headed down the path of paying a few specialties, but they're looking at being more inclusive and perhaps considering the call pay solution. Do you have any specific advice or suggestions to a physician leader or an executive who may be considering transitioning from paying cash for call to a call pay program much like the attending faculty plan?
If they're already paying cash for call to certain specialties, that's going to be tough. I think it would be important to first learn how the program works, make sure that the physician leader understands how it works, because they're going to be asked hard questions by the staff and they need to be able to answer them reasonably well. They'll also need to make sure that everyone on staff understands the benefits to all of us on staff of including more physicians in the call roster, and that the rationale, the underpinning for having the call compensation is to maintain an emergency room call roster. That's the essential purpose of it. And you'll need to offer it to everyone who's participating to a substantial degree. Weaning physicians off cash for call is going to be a tough problem. If you have hard financial realities that a hospital has to deal with, the physicians may have to understand that in order to include more physicians and include more specialties to allow the hospital emergency room to continue functioning well, some physicians are going to have to give so that their colleagues, the folks they work with shoulder by shoulder in the hospital every day, can be included also.
Knowing the amount of money that you've been credited for taking call over this past 3 years, and just knowing how humanistically you would have approached having the cash, can you speculate on what difference it would have made in your lifestyle if you'd have had the cash versus knowing how much money you've accumulated to this point?
If I'd been paid cash for call, I'm sure that I would have saved some of that cash, and I'm sure I would have spent some of that cash. And I know I would have paid taxes on all of it. The difference being that over the last 3 years I would have saved some, spent some, paid taxes on all of it, and I would have much less in my account than I do now. Right now I'm accumulating tens of thousands of dollars that over the next couple more years will leave me with a substantial account that I can then use to do something significant with, whether it's funding my children's education or funding my own retirement or buying a boat. I'll have something substantial to work with. Over the 5-year interval, I would have most likely frittered away that cash on a wide variety of things without any major significant expense. I think that at the end of 5 years, I'm going to have a financial resource available to me to do something significant with that I otherwise would not recognize in a similar manner.
You did a lot of work in the beginning that was really about 1.5 years of intense review, research, evaluation, and analysis. That process, because of that work, is certainly a much shorter process today. If you were doing it all over again, what would be some of the changes that you would like to see, or what would you do differently knowing what you know now?
What would I like differently? I would like to be able to have a manufactured program that I could turn on and introduce without having to create it. That's what would have been really nice. But we had to build it ourselves basically from scratch with professional help. But we built it ourselves, and we made mistakes along the way, and we've had to tweak the plan along the way. We've had to rework our personal services agreement. We've had to make some changes to the plan document once, and we've had to adjust our call pay tiers a couple of times to reflect changes in the data as we've collected it. So we've learned the hard way by creating them as we go. We also learned the hard way that using index cards with handwritten entries put into a ballot box in the emergency room was a lousy way to collect call data. And doing it electronically was a whole lot more reliable and sophisticated. We found that having dedicated administrative secretarial support is very important. It's important to have one point for people to be able to go to collect data, and one point to communicate back and forth with the consultant, for example. So we figured out a few things on our way. What would I like best starting over? Just be able to buy the whole thing in one turnkey operation. That'd been the best, but it didn't exist 3 years ago.
Dr. Oliver, what advice would you have for hospitals and physicians that are transitioning to this type of program?
Educating the physicians is very important, and that has to start very first thing. As soon as you start and implement the program, physician leaders have to be educated first, get them on board, make sure they understand what the program means and how it works, and then educate the staff at large. And you really can't communicate too much. Make sure you have the program's operational component in place on day one. Physicians expect things to go promptly and as they expect it, and having operational glitches really impairs your ability to make it roll out smoothly. And physicians pick up on that sort of thing very quickly. Bring on as many specialties on board at the same time as you can to enhance the sense of collegiality and the idea that this is a program for our entire hospital and our entire staff. And do what you can to include as many specialties as you can to really build that sense that we're doing this together. Physicians will have a sense of alignment among themselves because they're being rewarded jointly for their efforts covering the emergency room. They know that if they help the hospital remain financially solvent long term, it'll help the program remain solvent for themselves long term. And that goodwill support is essential to long-term success of the program.